Good everyone. This has been such an exciting month for me because I love to celebrate the women that I have come across in the last few years. And there's like so many of you that are so awesome that I'm like, who am I going to have? Because there's only 4 weeks in this month. Who am I going to have? And so last year we started this whole tradition, and this year we continued, and we had some really great interviews, even a group interview, which was like a first for me because I had to go crazy, talking to everybody. But it was really good. And thank you so much, all of you, for commenting and applauding all of their accomplishments and asking questions and all of that. So this evening, we are in our last week, which is sad, but we are still continuing with this celebration. And I want to say, I'm going to say it, but I hope that our other guests don't get upset, but I saved the best for last. So we have this evening my friend, Drea. I call her Drea. But her name is Andrea. And if you read the post which introduced this evening's topic, there were two really strong questions. And I did that on purpose because I really want you to, as she tells her story, to really try to put yourself in her shoes, because it really is a very real story and it's going to touch you in different ways. So I said touch your heart, but it's going to touch you in different ways. So the two questions were, can you imagine what life would be in a coma state? Right? To be able to hear and feel your family members, but not be able to respond. And the reason that I chose those two questions is because I've always watched like medical series. You know what I'm talking about? Grey's Anatomy. Those of you that were from back in the day, ER, right? Which was like the OG of the medical series, and drama series, I should say. And you always wonder, like, what would happen, right? At least I did. I always used to wonder what would happen. And I think there was actually like an episode, but it's TV, right? But here, my dear friend, Andrea, I'm going to call her Andrea Holcomb, is our special guest. So welcome.
Thank you.
And she has an incredible story, like I keep telling you. So Drea, tell us a little bit about yourself, because not everybody knows, and they're probably like, this girl looks really young compared to everybody else in here.
I like that. I like you looking young. But hello, everyone. Yes, I am Andrea Holcomb, and everyone who knows me does call me Drea. I am originally from Massachusetts. I was raised in Ohio, moved to Washington, D.C. in like 2000, the new millennium. And that's where I met my husband, Bomani. We have 3 daughters. We've been married almost 21 years this year. Oh my God, that seems like forever. Almost 21 years in August. We have 3 daughters, one in college and 2 in high school. We have a couple of animals living in our house too. I have a dog. She's mine. Her name is Cookie. She's a Shih Tzu Maltese. And then the girls have 2 cats, a 1-year-old cat and then an 11-month-old cat. So that's a little bit about me. A lot of people who might be on here may know me from the Florida Bella area, because that's where I met Catherine. I am a former teacher at Bella Lago, and I was also the cheer coach at Bella Lago school as well. Or Bella Lago Academy, I should say.
I'm just letting the viewers know to kind of comment, say, hey, I'm here, so that we know.
Yeah.
And so you recently moved from Florida to California, and how is that going? That was a big move.
Oh, it was a long move. We did a 10-day cross-country road trip. We spent 4 days at the Grand Canyon, which if you have never seen it, you definitely want to add that to the bucket list and stay a couple of days there because it was awesome. We got to see snow, which my kids had never seen snow before because they're Florida babies. But it was awesome. It was quite the adventure. We drove the whole way and I planned out all of the stays and everything. But California is exactly what you would think it is. It's literally what you see on TV. We absolutely love it. We're in Northern California, so it's a little bit cooler than it is in like LA. We're in the Sacramento area, but the weather is gorgeous. We love it here. And the transition for the girls going into school and everything was fantastic. So we're happy.
That's good. I'm
The
glad.
house search was a little bit hard in the beginning, but we love it.
That's good. Okay. So, if you are joining us a little late, that's okay. Definitely just put in the comments, hey, hi, I'm here, so that we can acknowledge that. I have Marion is on, Sandy, thank you for joining. So as you're coming in, don't worry about it. Just put it in the comments. Hey, hi. And if you have any questions at all, put them in there, and we'll get you some answers. So we're going to start by going back to April of 2022. Did I get that correct?
Right, it's been almost 2 years. Yeah.
And you were not feeling well. You came down with what was diagnosed as pneumonia.
No,
Okay.
we thought it was either COVID or pneumonia. So I was not feeling well for a few months. We thought that it was COVID. And I just, moms are doctors too. So we think, so I was just trying to medicate myself and keep moving with my life. And I remember I was supposed to be going to see Justin Bieber that night with our oldest daughter. And I couldn't breathe. I could barely walk. And I made my husband go, which he still hates me to this day. But he took her, and that evening when they came home, I'm like, I need to go to the emergency room. And we got in there, they took my vitals, and they didn't say one word to me. They literally wheeled me back into a room, gave me oxygen, started giving me fluids, and I'm looking around like, what's going on? They did a chest x-ray, kept coming back that it was like pneumonia, COVID. But anybody who was in the medical field or knows what lungs are supposed to look like, when you see them on an x-ray, it should be black. Mine were white, completely white. There was nothing that you could see through them at all. So they kept me what they thought was going to be overnight. I ended up being life flighted to Abbott Health in the middle of the night. So my husband didn't even know what was going on, or the next day, I think it was. I think that's what he told me. I got life flighted away because I ended up having Legionnaires' disease. Legionnaires' pneumonia is what it's called. And I know this is going to shock a lot of people, but I got that from gardening. So,
I'm just gonna pause right there because
yeah,
I want the members that are listening to this to know kind of what you were experiencing, but also what we were experiencing
yeah,
outside. So as she said, she gets admitted into the hospital, and we get a phone call or a text, I believe, from her husband, which is very good friends with my husband. And he says, hey, had to bring Drea to the hospital. They're not really sure what's going on. And yeah, she's being airlifted. So he tells me, I'm like, what? What is going on? I'm like, airlifted, like in a helicopter? I'm like, and she's letting them do that because, we don't really do that. So he's like, well, she's not, I think,
responsive.
yeah, you were not responsive. So, and I'm like, well, what's wrong? And they're like, they don't know, but they know that they've done everything that they can. And so they're sending her to another hospital. And I'm like, what is going on? She just went in for one thing, and now this is happening. So, so now you get airlifted to another facility, right? And then what happens?
So I'm there. Again, originally they're still kind of, I guess, preparing me like for COVID, giving you medications for COVID. So my husband tells the story because obviously I was out of it and didn't know I was in a coma. And they had actually given me a 40% chance of survival. So they had told my husband, call her friends, call her family, get everyone here, bring the kids up because she's not going to make it. And basically they told him, had I stayed home that night, I would have died in my sleep. So luckily I was, feeling bad enough that I'm like, I got to get out the house and get to the
And
hospital.
that was exactly the text or the phone call, because I think he did call him at some point.
Yeah.
He said, he was like, dude, they made me sign papers. Like, real. And
Yeah.
when he said that, I was like, what?
Yeah.
It
It
just
was.
was like, okay, what's going on? All right,
Yeah.
so they took you there. There are different places. You were out.
Right.
Like,
One doctor comes in finally and says to my husband, he goes, I think this might be a weird question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Does your wife garden? And my husband was like, yeah, I will never forget this man's name. His name is Dr. Cooper at Advent Health. Um, so my husband was like, yeah, she actually does. She has a garden. So he leaves out. My husband said he comes back not even 10 minutes later with a whole team of people. They swap out all of the medicines that I was on, put new stuff in, and said, we're going to give it 24 hours and see what happens. If she has any changes. Well, lo and behold, I started getting better. They started noticing that my organs were getting better because everything was shutting down. My kidneys were failing. Everything was shutting down. I was on a ventilator because I was not breathing on my own at all. And they put it's called an ECMO machine. And that machine is used, they connect it to like your chest and then your pelvic area to clean out your blood. I know it's a little graphic, I'm sorry, but yes, that's the story. So I was hooked up to both of those machines and they started noticing I was feeling better. I was starting to come out of it a little bit. So he then tells my husband that he knows that I had Legionnaires' pneumonia, Legionnaires' disease. And so that's
now
what
was he a resident? Because I think it was, or was he one of the specialists on the
he
team?
was a specialist. He was one of the specialists at the hospital.
Okay.
He's a pulmonologist.
Okay.
So he came in and was like, yeah, he said, my case is probably one of the few that they've ever had. Matter of fact, I was like the second one that they've ever had at that hospital from that particular thing. Because normally you get it from like dirty water or something like that. It's not something that's very common in soil. So he heard of a case before, and that's why he asked my husband, did I garden? And of course I did. And no one uses like gloves and stuff like that. I mean, I don't to garden or wear a mask. Like we just came from COVID. I don't want to wear a mask anymore. So, you don't think about those kind of things, but yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you that are gardeners, which there's a lot of you in here that like to garden, they actually do tell you on the bag that they give you a little bit of, those little fine print little things. Those are there. And what's interesting is that when this didn't happen like overnight, this process that she's telling you right now, it was literally like every week they were trying to test this and test that and see what was the problem, because everything, like she said, everything that they were doing was not changing for her. And basically she was on like life support. There was nothing that was working, and they're like, we don't know until this question came up. So it's literally not the fact that she had her hands in it, it's the ingest, like she basically was breathing this bacteria that was living in the soil. So just a thought to be careful when you are managing soil of any kind from these bags. Even I now, like, I'm trying to like keep my orchids alive and all that stuff. And I'm like, like even my kids are like, Mom, remember, like, don't, because they remember this whole process, right?
Yes, I don't do soil at all anymore. I have all hydroponics now. I don't do anything to do with soil. I'm scared.
So, okay, so you were technically in a coma for how long?
2.5 weeks.
2.5.
So I went in on April 11th. I woke up and it was April 27th. when I woke up.
Okay.
It was like April 27th, April 28th.
So let's go to the time when you were in the coma state.
Okay.
I know this is a little tough. And I want everybody to know this is actually her first interview. She does have a podcast with her husband, and this is her first interview actually kind of talking about it. So when Dre and I are very good friends, and she knows I'm very upfront. I ask the questions that nobody wants to ask. So
Right,
of course,
right.
she survived this thing. And so, obviously after she was back home and after a while, I asked her, what what happened to you when you were in that state? Because
Yeah.
I've never known anybody that was in that state and survived. So I
Mhm.
wanted the answers, like, especially since I lost my grandmother, right? I wanted to know what was going on prior to her passing. You know what I mean? Like, what might have she have heard or whatever. So anyway, so go back to that time. Tell us, what was your experience like?
Well, I can tell you, you hear everything. You hear everything and you feel like you can answer everyone, but you can't. You can't move, you can't talk. Um, Sorry if I get a little emotional because when I think about it, this portion of it, I get emotional. But I remember I could smell my husband. Like when he would walk into the room, obviously I didn't know I was in a room. I had no idea where I was. My husband laughed because I actually told him I thought like I was dreaming that I had gotten on some plane and someone kidnapped me. And he's like, you weren't kidnapped. You went on a plane, but you weren't kidnapped. But I remember that. I remember flying, but in my thoughts, it was something else. I remember seeing or hearing like a lot of voices around me, but I had no idea who these people were. But as I mentioned, I could smell my husband. I always knew when he was there because I could smell him in the room. And I would always hear him saying, "Hey, babe, I'm here. I'm with you today. Or how are you?" But obviously, I couldn't answer. I didn't realize that something was wrong until one day I heard him say, "Hey, babe, I'm here." And then I heard my mom say, "And mommy's here too." And I was like, "Oh, wait, what? Where am I?" Because then my mom lives in DC. I know that I live in Florida. So what is she doing here? So now I'm thinking I'm dreaming. And then finally, obviously, when I wake up, I realize like I'm not dreaming. My mom is actually here, and I am somewhere that I'm not supposed to be. But you can hear everything. I couldn't really feel like touches and stuff like that. My husband and my mom tell me that when they would tell me to like squeeze their hand. So we know now when people say squeeze my hand and we feel them doing that, we can actually hear you saying it. And in our minds, we're doing it, but we don't think that we are. But my family tells me that I was actually doing what they would tell me. If they would tell me wiggle my toes, then I would wiggle my toes. But yeah, you hear and can smell. Your senses, I think, get stronger because you can't do anything else. So it was scary.
So similar to, I guess, like a dream state is really what
Yes.
like when you have dreams and you're trying to talk to people but they can't hear you, but you
Right.
think you're doing one thing and they're not experiencing the same thing, or vice
Right. Right.
versa.
And you feel like it's like you have the weighted blankets. It's
Mhm.
almost like you have a weighted blanket on your chest and you can't lift up to do anything. That's what it felt like.
Now you also had tubes, right? And
Yes.
and so how does that feel? Because I'm always afraid if I ever had to have that I'd be like choking on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uncomfortable, thing. But I understand you're kind of sleeping, so you
Yeah.
really don't realize that that's happening.
Right. So I didn't know obviously that I had them in until I woke up. And it's probably a good thing because I can guarantee if I were awake, it would not have gone down the way that they wanted it to. But when I did finally wake up, I didn't realize that I tried to talk, didn't realize I could not talk. The reason I could not talk was I had the trach not in my throat, it was actually in my neck. So I do You might can see them. I do still have the scars. They've actually gone down a lot, but I have the scars from the tracheotomy. I still also have the scar from the ECMO machine as well. But when I woke up, I saw like these long blue tubes coming out of my neck connected to this machine. And I'm like, what is this? And of course, I'm human. What do you think I try to do? Touch it. Well, guess what? I can't because I can't move. So
So you wake up,
mhm.
right, from this dream state,
Right.
right? And you're confused, which is normal, right? Everybody, I've seen that happen. Pretty much you're like, what's going on? Because in your head, it's still April 11th. Like you just,
I didn't remember.
right.
I didn't remember. I didn't even remember going to the hospital at first. In
Okay.
my mind, when I woke up, I thought that I had gotten into a car accident like that day and that something had happened to me and the kids because everyone who knows me knows that I'm always traveling with my girls. So I thought that I got in an accident and something happened to my kids because I didn't see them in the room. So they were literally the first ones that I'm like mouthing, where are the girls? Where are the girls? And they kept telling me they were okay, but I didn't even realize that I was there until my mom actually said to me, because I said, where am I? And she said, remember when you went to the hospital because you thought you had COVID? And that's when I was like, oh, yeah. And so I shook my head, yes. And she said, well, you never came home. And so I asked her, I said, well, what's today? Is it the 12th? And she said, no, baby, it's April. That's what she said. She said, April 28th. I said, I've been here since April 28th. And she was like, yes. So, yeah.
And so this whole time that you were in the hospital, what was going on at home? Because you were mentioning your girls. Did your girls ever at any point see you in this state before
No,
you woke up?
no. Which I'm actually glad looking back at it now. My husband made the decision to not let them see me like that. Especially once I started getting better. They were like, nope, mom's coming home. You don't need to see her. And I'm glad they kind of tried to keep life going. Tried not to get emotional again, I'm sorry, but they tried to keep life
That's what
going.
we're here. That's why we're here. It's supposed to be emotional, real, so that
Oh,
people can understand that this happens. This is a
yeah,
normal, it might not happen to everybody, but it can happen.
it
So,
happened.
yeah.
But Natalia and Naja are my oldest two daughters, and they were cheerleaders at the time at Liberty High School. It was Naja's junior year and Natalia's freshman year. So they tried to make sure, my husband made sure that they would still go to practice and do things. Obviously, when it first happened, they missed a couple days from school because when I got life flight, no one even knew where I was. So that was kind of scary for them. But um, my youngest Noelle, for her, she said she felt like she had to go to school because that's where all of her friends were. And if she was home, all she's going to do is think about me. So they felt like they needed to keep everything going. My husband was obviously at the hospital with me all the time. So he was not working at all. But thankfully, he had been with this company for a lot of years. So they were very understanding and knew that he needed to be with me and take care of the girls. So it's funny because I actually have videos. I go back and look at them sometimes that they were like recording things on my phone because he took my phone. So they were recording videos of things that were happening at the house during that time. And you could see that they were hurting, but they were trying to like be happy at the same time. But we tried to keep things normal as he could.
They did. And um I know firsthand because my husband and your husband were like communicating every day.
Mhm.
We were going there, pretty much every day as well, trying to give the family space, but at the same time to be there for him because we always think of moms, right? We're always like the mom is the person that knows everybody's schedule, the person that knows what everybody likes to eat,
Right.
how to shop, doctors, all of that information, and that all fell on your husband.
Yeah.
And we go through life thinking, it's good. Like that's not gonna, there's not gonna be a situation that we need to worry about, because you think life is just forever, right? And then something like this happens, and the spouse in the situation is like overwhelmed. And in this case, there were kids involved as well. So it was a lot. It was a lot to try to manage everything, and to also go through his own uh,
Yes,
process through
yes,
the
yes,
whole situation.
yeah,
So yeah, so I really do applaud him, because he really went above and beyond to try to keep
yeah,
everything under control. And like you said, so much so that at one point it was just like, okay, they're not going to school because it's not happening.
yeah,
Because they would go to school and then get a phone call, can you come pick me up? It's because it wasn't working. They were trying. And this
yeah,
is what happens when you try to go back to normalcy, right?
yeah,
Middle of a situation, but sometimes it just doesn't happen, because
right.
everybody has a different process. Um, so you wake up now,
Mhm.
and you can't speak, can't
Right.
really walk, you can't really move. And what were you feeling emotionally now and physically? Because it must have been frustrating for
Yes.
you to be like, okay, I can't even like go to the bathroom by myself now, right?
Yes. It was tiring. I think that was the hardest part for me because, I mean, you know me. First of all, I like to talk. So to not be able to talk and communicate, I'm like, wait, what is this? What happened? But even like I couldn't even lift my hand or my head for that matter. You take so much for granted because we do it every day, that you
Mhm.
don't realize what it would be like to not be able to do those things. I couldn't even turn my head like this. Literally, I was on my back and I was just straight. That was it. So not being able to do that, like I cried often. Like literally, I would lay in bed and just cry because in my mind I'm thinking, why me? Like that was all the time that played in my head was why me? Like I do so much and I try so hard to do the right thing, and it's like, why me? So it was hurtful to like when my husband would come and then him and my mom would come, but the one thing that would bother me is they would bring food, which we all know that I could not eat. Um, but to just see them in the room and I can't talk to them. And I remember getting frustrated because one thing I taught my girls when they were younger is reading lips. And like when we were in the stores and we see something funny, we would like whisper. So they learned how to read lips at an early age. My husband cannot read lips. So I would be saying things and he's looking at me like, I
What's
have no idea. So he gave me, my mom was like, well, write it down. And I'm thinking, what? I can't move my hand. So they grab a pen and a piece of paper and they tell me to write. Catherine, I could not even scribble scrabble. Like I tried to hold the pen and I could hold it, but to write something, the muscle in my hand did not allow me to. So I actually saved it. The paper that he had me write down, I saved it and wrote, did my little scrabbles or my scribbles. And then when I was able to write again, I did my signature next to it, and I have both of those dates. So I have it in like a keepsake box, so I can always see where I was at one point in my life. So just to kind of be like, man, that was really me, but it was emotionally draining to say the least that was going on. So
And how long did the process take to basically, for rehabilitation? Because that's basically what it was, right? You had to
yeah,
be able to get out of the bed and walk, and then eventually talk and do your normal, what's considered normal
yeah.
activity.
The walking was probably the hardest. There were days that I actually would give up. I remember the first time they set me up out of the bed. Um, I was like literally like a newborn baby. I'm like this. I was wobbly because I'd been laying down for so long. And I couldn't, like, my eyes couldn't even adjust properly to what was happening. And there were so many people in the room because remind you, they're trying to sit me up and have me walk or stand and I'm still hooked up to all these machines. So everything is in the way.
Yeah.
And I remember them lifting me, and my husband and my mom were actually there the first time. I know you saw it because my husband posted a picture of my feet. He was
Yeah,
really good about not
he did
posting
actually send
at
us.
all.
No, he didn't post anything, and he did send us, I think, two photos. And he
Mm-hmm.
was just like, just for you, so you
Yeah,
can see. But
yeah, yeah.
honestly, those pictures are so impactful.
Mhm, mhm.
Ooh, so it was like, I understood why he didn't want to share that those were like private things. And I was
Yeah,
actually like touched that he did share those with us, but
yeah.
it really, again, brought to light, like, this is a serious thing. This is our friend that we just saw recently is fighting for her life in the hospital. This was prior to you actually, coming out of the coma. And everything just seemed so dark and like there was no hope. And it was like, what, here today? And then this is happening. Like, what if it's me? What if this was me? Like the whole time I'm just like, what if this happened to me? What, I don't even know, like what would have happened. So yeah, so the rehabilitation.
Yeah. It was, like I said, they would try to get me up. Then after a while, like I had this one physical therapist, he was like amazing. And they found my husband had told them that I'm a singer and I love music. So they would always play like at night, they would play classical music for me at night or like ocean sounds because he told them my happy place is the beach.
Mhm.
So they would always play and make sure that they were doing that stuff for me. But my physical therapist came in one day and he was like, what's your favorite kind of music? I was like, well, because he saw I have a tattoo that's a microphone for those who don't know. And it's like a half sleeve on my arm. So, so
Drea,
they saw,
Drea is a beautiful singer. So yeah.
thank you. So he started asking me about music and he said, you know what? I'm going to put on some hip hop. And I'm like, I'm shaking my head like, okay, let's do that. And so he literally was like, we're going to work out the muscles. And he said, today you're going to walk to Bone Thugs and Harmony. So remember I said that I was raised in Cleveland, Ohio. I
Mhm.
actually grew up with Bone Thugs and Harmony. I went to high school with them. I dated one of them. So that was a long time ago. But
So let me
so
just pause here because some of these over 55 ladies might not know what you're talking about right now. But basically, ladies, all you have to know is it was a very early, I would say like 90s, right? Rap group.
right,
You
right.
have to know.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. We'll leave it at that. But he put them on. So for me, I'm like, that was nostalgic because he didn't know where I was from. And of course, I couldn't say anything to him. So he put that on. And that was probably the first time that I actually like stepped and took steps. So it was baby steps. I did physical therapy. In the beginning, it was like once a day. Sometimes it was twice a day. But to be honest, one of the most emotional things for me was when we talk about not being able to walk or move was once I was awake every morning, they would take me out of my bed and sit me in a chair.
Mhm.
But they couldn't like take me out the bed and put me in a chair. They literally would put the Hoya lift on me, like they would put it under me and lift me up. And so they would always make a joke like, you're going on your roller coaster, you're at Disney World today. And I'm, of course, looking at them like, shut up. This is not where I want to be. This is not Disney World.
Yeah, yeah.
But but even that experience to see that, and it's like in your mind, you're like, I am really helpless and I have to depend on everybody. And you mentioned not being able to go to the bathroom. I think that for me was the hardest of it all because I'm like, I don't know these people. And you're like seeing me in this vulnerable state. And I'm like, can you just like try to get me to the bathroom, try to do this? But obviously, I had like catheters and all that stuff. So we didn't have to worry about that. But even like, I always felt like if I did use the bathroom on myself, like, oh my God, I have to tell them. Like, this is weird. Like, I am a grown woman at this point. It's like, you shouldn't have to come in and change me. But it humbles you, 100%
Yeah,
humbles
and
you.
again, as a woman, you just feel like you said, you feel helpless. when you're the
Yes.
one that's always the one helping, right?
Correct.
He's taking care of everyone else, and
Yep.
now you need help, and it's just like you said, you're in such a vulnerable state that you don't like kind of don't know what to do with yourself because you kind of feel like you're failing. But at the same time, you're like, I got to do something, right?
I
Or
do.
else
Yep.
it's
I think for me, what helped was my girls. They were home. They needed me. And I knew my husband was doing a dang good job taking care of them. That I wasn't worried about. But I knew that mentally, he couldn't understand what they were going through because he's dad. He's not
right,
mom.
right.
So I'm like, I gotta get better for my kids. So that's what I would do. I would try to think about stuff that they were doing, and that would motivate me to like get up and move a couple of inches more. And I would be tired because one thing that they would monitor was like my oxygen levels and stuff like that, just to make sure because I couldn't get out the hospital room door without my oxygen dropping to like 40, 50. So I was on the ventilator for a while. And when they started doing like tests to try to keep me off of it. But again, you don't realize how you take for granted your breathing, that when they would take me off, we breathe regular like we are now. But when they took me off, I'm like, and they're like, slow down. I'm thinking, this is slow. Like I'm trying to catch my breath, but in reality, that wasn't helping me. So they do like trials and take you like so many hours a day. And then one day I was like, you're not putting me back on this machine. I just sat there and I just prayed. And I'm like, God, you got this. I'm not in control. You got this. You have to have control because I'm trying to, but it's not my job. So I just sat there and I said, I'm going to be off this machine by the end of this week. And every time they would put me on it, I don't care how much I could barely breathe. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. Because they were testing it and I didn't realize, they told me later that that was actually helping my lungs. Me fighting to stay off was helping my lungs. So once I was able to stay off for a while, they gave me what's called a Passamere valve. And that's because obviously you have a big hole in your neck from the tracheotomy. So I still had the trach, but then they put this valve on top of it, and that's how you can talk. So once I got that, it was over because now I can speak. And I can tell you what I like and what I don't like.
Yes,
But
even though it was a whisper I heard at the very beginning, it was like you were whispering, but I did hear a funny story that your husband brought in a sandwich and then you were like, really? Really? You're gonna eat that in front of me right now? And he was like,
yeah, yeah. And I remember that day because I actually kind of yelled it a little bit, and I yelled so loud that the valve popped off. And the lady came, it's not something that hurts. Like I literally could take it and put it right back on. And the nurse came in because she heard me. She's like, was that you? And my husband said, I told you that once she starts talking, it's over. But because my voice was so strong, like thankfully I didn't have any damage to like my vocal cords or anything from that. Because even when I was able to talk, the doctors would come in and they're like, your voice is so strong for someone who literally has been on a ventilator for over a month. So they were all surprised, but that was, once I could talk, I felt better.
Well, at this point, did the girls now come to see you once you were up and about, basically, or?
They actually didn't come see me until the week before Mother's Day. So that kind of gives you a timeline of what was happening. They came to see me the week before Mother's Day. They were only allowed to come like that Sunday, I think it was. And we kind of asked them if they wanted to come, if they were okay. And at that point, I was off of the ECMO machine, but I was still on the ventilator because the first time they saw me, I couldn't talk yet. So I hadn't gotten the Passamere valve yet. So of course they're lip reading and all of that. But I remember when they walked in, their faces like they were trying to smile, but then they like would just stare at me. And then at one point, Noelle came and sat on the bed next to me, and she just looked at me, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And she shook her head no, and she just laid in my lap and just started bawling, crying. I felt, as a mom, I felt so bad because I'm like, my baby is crying and there's nothing I can do about it right now. So I just
Well,
told her,
and
you
that
know,
was
I'm
the first
okay.
time that I actually felt you, saw you
Yeah,
since April 11th, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that must have been so shocking because physically as well, you did not look the same. You
No,
were, you had lost a lot of weight.
yes.
Uh,
Well, at that point, when they saw me, I was losing the weight, but I was so swollen from all the medicines. Um, like my hands were like really big and all of that from the original medicines that they were giving me. So I was starting to lose weight, but my face, I was like, I like to say Skeletor from like He-Man. Like that's what I looked like. It
it
was
did not
bad.
look like you. It did not look like.
Not at all.
Imagine for, well, for anybody, but mainly for your girls to see mom not look, you know, that's not the same mom that we saw, you know, at
Yeah.
home. And then it kind of just all came together probably for them, and that was it. But I'm glad that they got their emotions out. That's
Yeah. They
important.
did. I think Naja was the oldest one, was she held it together big time because I think for her, she felt like she had to become me. Like she became the mama, and she still treats them like that now because she took that role. Now she, still is like, I'm in charge. I have to do things the way mom would have wanted them done. And, she made sure that everybody, like, that they were taken care of,
Right.
which, she had her moments, but she would like not say anything to me about it. She would talk to her friends, which I'm glad she had all of my girls had a really big friend group. I mean, so so they communicated and made sure that they were okay. Even people that they didn't talk to all the time knew what was going on, so they made sure that they were okay. And I'm grateful for that.
Take a moment and talk about your mom because you mentioned your mom a few times, and your mom is how old now?
She will be, oh God, how old is she? She'll be 73 next month.
Okay.
And well, not next month, in May.
So some of you in here are probably like, oh, she's a baby. Yes. And so did you have a conversation with your mom ever after the fact about how the experience was for her? Because as a mom, right, to have an adult child in the hospital basically fighting for their life, and she's a nurse, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So in a way, it was almost like maybe she felt helpless at some points because she couldn't be in charge. She could ask questions and, kind of look at your chart a little bit and do all that stuff. But it was like, did you ever have a conversation about
I
her?
did. I did. The one thing she said is my husband kind of prepared her for the day that when she first got there,
Mhm.
what she was going to see. But she said even him telling her, hey, she's connected to all these tubes. This is what's going on. She said it was even worse when she got there because she was expecting the worst. But obviously, I'm her child and I'm the baby. So she said she came in and she literally almost passed out. My husband had to grab her, but she said she did a lot of praying and crying. And for her, I think she tried to be strong as well for the girls. She said she was at the house and it was weird because my mom's never been to my house without me ever being there.
Right, right.
So she was in my house for almost a month and I wasn't there. She said that was like really strange for her. And she's like, I can smell you in the house. Like your scent is in your house. So she, wanted to be there, but she said it made her sad at the same time. But I think for her, from conversations that I've had with her, all she could do is just sit there and pray. And she said that at one point she literally was like, God, take me, not her. Like she's got to be there for her kids. And I wish it was me, not her. And I'm like, of course, as a mom, I get it. That's what you say.
Mhm.
But like I would never want anything to happen to any of my kids. But
Right.
so I couldn't even like mentally imagine what my mom was going through. And even sometimes now, we were actually talking about it the other day, and she's like, okay, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's stop. Because she still gets emotional because like for her, I talk to her every day, you know that. And to know that she had had a conversation with me prior to that, like maybe an hour before I went to the hospital, and I didn't tell her I was going because I know my mom. Except when we got there, I literally said to my husband, call my mother because something's not right. Call my mother. And of course he did. But you know, she's like, you were okay and now you're not. So it was definitely weird for her, but she held down the fort, and I was grateful that, you know, my husband has a great mother-in-law. So she was definitely there for him and the girls for sure. But she, you know, she said she was dealing with her own emotional thing, but you know, she managed.
So after this whole experience, let's put it that way, what did it teach you? What did you walk away with after this?
Besides the, I mean, people say it all the time and it sounds a little cliche, but it's reality. Life is too short. So, one of the things that I felt like God was telling me when I was in a coma was I kept hearing him say, stop doing what you're doing. It's about you. Don't worry about everybody else. It's about you. And, you know, I mentioned that I was a teacher and a cheer coach at the school. And I kept thinking, no, my kids need me. The babies need me. My cheerleaders need me. And God kept saying, it's time for you to take care of you. So one of the things that it taught me was to actually do what I'm supposed to do, follow my passion. My girls are older, you know, it's time for me to focus on what my calling is, um, and take a step back. He had, you know, one of the first things I said to my husband when I woke up was, God told me to quit my job and write a book.
I'm
And so,
sorry.
yeah, he looked at me like, quit your job. Yeah, that's not happening. But he understood. So he, you know, supported the decision. Of course, we all know I went back to work that August because I couldn't stay away. But I can honestly say that I am no longer teaching and I have been, you know, faithfully writing my book. So I feel like I did those things and then obviously the stuff that I'm doing currently as well. So, you know, it taught me again, like I said, life is too short, but to just follow your heart, follow your dreams, that it's not, today is the day. Stop putting everything off for tomorrow because tomorrow is definitely not promised to any of us. So
Yeah.
I follow.
And I think, I mean, you're exactly right that we live for today because nothing is promised. And I think a lot of people understood that more, especially after the whole COVID experience that we all went through. It became a reality for us, who we never thought that we would have been in that kind of situation, home and, you know, being afraid the
Yeah.
way. So that's true. But I think also behind all of that, what's important is to realize your why. Because, like in your situation, you said, my girls, I realized I have to be there for my girls. Everything that I'm doing is for my girls, even though it's for you too, obviously.
Right.
But
Right.
the drive behind you getting better, right, was for you to be there for your girls, to build more memories, to help them to kind of to go through this process again as a family, to kind of start rebuilding again, because there was, you know, even though you had your heart, your house, and your family was together, that kind of put a dent in everything. So to
Yeah.
then be like, you know, this love that you have as a family, to kind of piece it together and be like, now we're gonna move on and we're gonna live like today is the last day.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why we took the leap to move to California. It's like, if not now, when?
Exactly. I've said that before in here, ladies. If not now, then when? When is it going to happen, right? And in Drea's case, obviously, it's, you know, she had a different experience and her path you're going to hear about in a few minutes, but this is relatable to anything. This is especially in this group, right? I'm going to lose weight tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to be, more mindful about my heart. I'm going to take care of my colon. I'm going to get that colonoscopy done. Yeah, okay, whatever. Now, tomorrow, and tomorrow. But we can't, unfortunately, you cannot live that way.
No.
Life has a way of smacking you in the face and being like, absolutely not. You took me for granted and you're not getting a second chance, right?
Right.
In your case, you did get a second chance. And now, so since this whole experience,
Mhm.
it ignited something inside you, and now you've launched a new website and a business. So tell us more about that.
So my business is me. No, I
Exactly.
I literally am branding myself. So I am now a life and relationship coach, and I mean, my slogan is helping people navigate life's journey. So I'm helping people get through the obstacles that they think that they're facing to find their passion. Because again, like I said, if not now, when? So we're so used to seeing things like, oh, I'm going to put this on my vision board. And it's great to have a vision board. But if you have a vision board and you have no vision, that's a problem. Like you can put all the pictures up in the world, but if you're not setting small goals to accomplish those things on your vision board, because we so often have these huge goals that are so unattainable that we forget to set the small ones. If you set the small goals
Right.
first, you'll see that, hey, I can accomplish this in a week. Okay, I did that. Now this is going to take me to this. Like you have to set those steps. So what I do now is I kind of coach people through those steps. We set up a plan specifically for me, so none of my clients have the exact same plan because I speak with them one on one, and we make things based on what their needs are, not based on what a workbook tells me that we should do.
Correct. Correct.
So I customize everything for each one of my clients for the life goals and what their passions are, what their fears are. I also help with self-esteem. I do also work with children, of course, because we all know that I have a passion for kids as well. So I do work with middle school and high school students as well. And like I said, I also with relationship coaching, I mentioned that my husband and I will be celebrating our 21st wedding anniversary this year. So I have a lot of advice to give. No marriage is perfect, no relationship is perfect, but it's about what you want to do to build those bonds and keep those connections is what is important. So I'm out here and doing it all because that's what I
Now,
like to do.
and a lot of the things that you're saying, I mean, obviously, if you've been in this group for a while, you're probably like, Catherine says that stuff too. Yes, because that is it. You can make a million goals, but if you don't take one step towards any of those, like she's saying, small goals, right? Smaller goals, and I say small wins, right? If you're not taking action, then what is the point of that being on your vision board and saying, oh, someday, right? Because you're not taking any steps towards that. So that's why it's important to have life coaches, fitness coaches, to be the person to hold your hand and go through those goals with you and kind of scratch out the ones that are not real goals, not the real ones that you want, and then get you to take those, give you the fire that you need to figure out your why and to take those steps towards getting what you really, really want. Now, on your website, you say, I was reading through, and you say reflection became my secret weapon. So what is
Yes. Reflecting on obviously what happened, reflecting on my life prior to all of that. When I reflect on those things, I always felt like I was always, I had goals, I had dreams, but I always felt like I was putting everyone else before me. And obviously, as a mom, we always feel that we have to, right? We have to make sure that everyone else is taken care of before we take care of ourselves. When I was sick and had all the time in the hospital in the bed, I reflected back on that, like, what can I do to still be there and be a part of what's going on with my family, but not just be there for them, but be who I am called to be as well. Because it should always be about us also. And a lot of times as women, we forget that. We forget that we can't be there for other people if we aren't even there for ourselves.
Correct.
If we are drained and we don't know what we want to do with our own lives, how can I give advice to my kids if I'm not following my own dreams? And I'm telling them, follow your heart, follow this, do that. And then they're looking at me like, well, mommy, what are you doing? I never wanted my kids to ever be able to ask me that question. So I made sure that I always, anything that I set out to do, I did. And, I feel like that's what I'm doing now. I look back at those times and I'm like, there's no way, I should have not been doing what I'm doing now. But I feel like I had to go through what I went through in order for me to have a better understanding. Because I like to call it people pleasing. You want to make sure everybody else is okay, but you're really not because you're not happy with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's a very common thing for women, to always put ourselves second,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we want the best for everybody, and there's nothing wrong with that. Wanting the best for your kids, for your grandkids, right? Or for even for your spouse, but you
Yeah.
can't be the person in the shadows all the time. You
Right.
can't be the cheerleader all the time because you need people to be your cheerleader too. But
That's
if
right.
you don't have things for them to cheer you on for, then you're not going to have cheerleaders,
Right.
right? So it's like, I've always heard the word that, it's not selfish of you to do whatever,
Mhm.
but they're using selfish in a negative way. And I don't even think the word is selfish. It's just you're trying to live your life, so that you, like you said, you don't have regrets later on. And even for the people that look at you, like, I consider myself a public, kind of person because everybody knows me on in Facebook, right? Everybody sees my life, my kids and everything. So how can I, as a coach, say to somebody, do A, B, C, when in my own life, I'm not doing it, like you said,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So think about those things, ladies, because you feel that people are not watching you. You feel, some of you have said even to me, you feel invisible, right? Like people aren't really, they don't care what I wear. They don't care what I do. They don't care how I feel. But the truth of the matter is people are watching you. They're listening to you. Your family, your kids and your grandkids are watching your every move. So if you are saying to them, giving them advice to do something, are you taking your own advice? Are you being that person as well? That's really what you have to kind of think about, as Drea is saying. So, um, like I mentioned before, this was a complete wake up call for me, for us as a family, I should say. And I know other of our mutual friends have said the same thing, when we were texting each other and talking about the situation, when it was happening, it was like, this is crazy. This is crazy. We just kept saying like, this is not happening. This is crazy. And, again, I just kept saying that could be me, it could be you. Like I was trying to explain to my kids, like, do you understand that this could be me? It could be me in the hospital right now. What would you do? And they kind of were like, they didn't like that question. But this also brings it back to, we recently lost a friend, an adult friend, who kind of situation similar, but there was not the same end result. In her case, diagnosed with lung cancer, stage 4, boom, 3 weeks later, gone. Right? So it's, you're never prepared. Life doesn't say, hello, I'm gonna now give you a disease or an infection. Be
It's
ready
not like
for
a
it.
hurricane.
No, exactly. So it's like, all these things happen. And so what do you want the ladies in this group to take away from your story?
Um, Find your passion. Know what you want to do. Set those small goals before you have those big goals. It's okay to set the big goal, but underneath that big goal, do like a brain map, something that I used to use with my middle school students all the time. Do like a brain map where you have this big bubble of your large goal. And underneath those goals, you put arrows to the small goals. And as you gradually accomplish them, tick them off. Because eventually you'll get to that goal. But if you have to make sure that you're able to attain the goals that you're setting for yourself. Because, obviously we're in a fitness group right now. So let's just say your goal is to lose 100 pounds. Well, guess what? You're not going to lose 100 pounds by next week. You can take whatever fad diet you want. It's not going to be healthy. It's going to take time and discipline. So just like setting your goals, it takes time and discipline. If you set them, but you don't do anything to fulfill them, it's not going to happen. If
Right.
you say, hey, in 3 months, I want to be able to dye my own hair or something like that, and you don't normally dye your own hair, I know that's probably a small one, but there's people who don't know how to do those things. But you don't watch YouTube or talk to someone who does it, then you're never going to be able to do that. You have to make the choice to do what those goals are. I mean, that's really what it is. You have
Mhm.
to be able to do it yourself.
Yeah, because as coaches, we can give you all the tools that you need. You can say, I want to do ABC. We're like, great, here are all the tools. So, when when you ladies say to us, well, I need to be motivated. I need motivation, right? And so coaches give you all the tools
Mhm.
to give you the motivation. But that word that you said with a capital D, discipline, is what it really comes down to. Because
Yes.
you do not do the work, even if we're talking about fitness, we're talking about life, we're talking about relationships, whatever that is, you don't do the work, it's not going to get done. It's not
You're
going to
not
get
going
done.
to get the
And
results.
for those of you that are thinking here, well, you ladies are saying that because you're young and you have all the time that you need. Obviously, in this case, the lesson learned here is that she's much younger than a lot of us in here, and still look at the situation that happened. So age doesn't really matter. It's just what matters to you. How important is your goal or goals to you? How, setting a time frame, like she's saying, it's not going to happen overnight, no, but set a time frame, for yourself so that you can get it done. So let me just read through some of the comments because there were some good ones in here. Jessica says, wow, your story is a testimony. God is good, that he kept you and your family. Thank you for being vulnerable, and for sharing.
Well, thank you, Jessica. You're welcome.
Sandy says, thank you for sharing your miraculous story. So grateful that you fully recovered. Um, let's see. Oh, I saw another one. Where'd it go? Happy to see you both. Yeah, so that was that. Okay. So Drea, thank you so much for sharing this story because I know it was a roller coaster of emotions.
I'm
I
gonna
was
I'm gonna
trying
go
to
in
keep
my
it
bedroom
together,
and
but
just cry now. No.
I know I was like kind of trying to keep it together. And just so
We
you
did
all
good. We
know,
did good.
yeah, I mean, like she mentioned, April 11th is the anniversary date. For this, and it's coming right up. So I wasn't really sure if we were going to be able to pull it off. But Yeah, she did. So I really applaud you, and I love that you were so honest and open with your feelings and your family's experience through all of this. And so thank you so much for that, because I know it wasn't an easy process, but it's part of healing.
Yes.
Uh, so I'm really glad. So if you'd like to follow Andrea or schedule maybe a consultation with her, because she does have a lot of fabulous advice for you, you can visit her website, which I will put in the comments under this video, but it's AndreaMHolcomb.com. She's also on Facebook and on Instagram, which I will also share that, even though a lot of my ladies in here are like, Facebook is enough for me. I don't really understand Instagram. But yeah, if you check out her website, she has a lot of nice reading material in there, a little bit about her story that she shared this evening, and a little bit about the different things that she does, because there's not only life coaching, but there's like some travel stuff in there as well. So be sure to, check it out. And if you have any questions, I'm sure that you can reach out to her. But again, thank you so much
Thank you,
for being
Catherine.
here.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yes, and for watching, because we did have a few people on, and for your
Yes.
comments. Thank you so much. But as you guys know, I'm spiritual person. I wouldn't say I'm religious, but I will say that God, or whoever it is, whoever you believe in, right? Even if it's just the universe, is very good. And I'm so glad that my friend is still here and with her family, and that she is going to do amazing things now with her second chance. So
I appreciate that.
I'm going to hold it back now. All right. All right, everyone. Good night. Thank you
Bye.
so much for joining. Bye, Drea.
Bye, Catherine.